Hey, it's NPR's Book of the Day. I'm Andrew Limbong. If you are a language lover, a words nerd, you will love today's episode. It's an interview with Martha Barnette about her book, Friends with Words, which is a deep and fun dive into the etymologies of different words, the surprising histories of the phrases we use on a day-to-day basis. And notice I said language lover and not language bully or someone who tut-tuts over grammar, because in this interview with Here and Now's Peter O'Dowd, Barnette makes the argument that that is actually the least interesting way to approach language. More after the break.
Support for this podcast and the following message come from Indeed. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. Indeed's sponsored jobs helps you stand out. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed and get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/book. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Judging by the letters we get, I know many of you are sticklers for grammar and properly pronounced words. Consider this recent email read by our producer, Emiko Tamagawa.
Love your program, but derailed by shocking grammar. You can't be most unique, more unique, increasingly unique. I've heard these and more on your program. Unique is a definitive. You are or are not.
Well, I can appreciate that, and so can our next guest. Martha Barnette is co-host of the radio show Away with Words, and her new book is called Friends with Words. It's the kind of book you should read if you ever want to know where the word boycott came from or why there's not a word for giving someone something to drink. Martha, hi.
Hi, it's great to be here.
Good to have you. I know you're the kind of radio host who's used to getting feedback from passionate listeners. So first of all, what do you think about our transgression there with the word unique? Should we be hanging our heads and getting ready to issue a retraction?
No, Peter, I give you all a dispensation. Saying unique that way, most unique, very unique, it's just not a problem anymore. There are degrees, actually, of words like that. And we like to say on Away with Words that talking about your grammatical pet peeves is the least interesting part of talking about language. There's so much more to talk about word origins and regional dialects and slang and that weird thing your grandma used to say. I mean, and often when somebody is criticizing somebody else's language, they're not right.
In fact, your book, it's full of words and facts about words that will blow your mind if you're interested in the English language. So let's dig into that. Where did your passion for all of this come from?
Well, I inherited that from both of my parents who were educators. But when I was in Latin class in 9th grade, I had what I call a spark word. You know, birders talk about the spark bird that got them really excited about birding. And for me, I had a spark word, and that was the word cross, C-R-A-S. And it means tomorrow in Latin. And I thought, wait a minute, cross? Is that any relation to procrastinate? And so I ran to the dictionary, found out that indeed procrastinate is literally to put something off until tomorrow. And that kind of started me on the road to exploring all the history and culture that can be fossilized inside a single word. And then when I got to college, I took ancient Greek and I almost flunked out.
You know, I took Latin in high school. It's not fair. I did not have a spark word. In fact, I don't know if I had any sort of inspiration except for that it was very difficult.
Yes, Latin is indeed difficult, and Greek is harder. And I ended up finding a fabulous tutor, a polyglot tutor, who taught me ancient Greek in an entirely different way, and kind of gave me a bird's eye view of languages that spring from Proto-Indo-European, which accounts for nearly half of the languages spoken in the world. And so I had this sort of 3,000-foot view of all these languages that are connected, like Greek and Russian and Italian and Irish and English.
You wrote about a few words in the book that caught my attention, and I'm going to ask you about a few of those, and then we'll let you take over the wheel. But broadcasting, we are broadcasting this interview across the country right now. That word has its roots in agriculture. I did not know that.
It does, yes. Broadcasting, literally, in its most original sense, meant to scatter seeds, as opposed to just putting them in the ground individually. If you're broadcasting, you're casting it far and wide. And it's one of many agricultural terms that we have in English. For example, the word aftermath, which math in that sense has to do with mowing. And so it's after that first mowing, the grass left around.
What does it mean when someone says, I am sufficiently sophoncified?
A lot of people are going to recognize that term. Sufficiently sophoncified is sort of a fancy way of saying I've had enough to eat. It's kind of an Americanism that came up at a time when people were having fun with English and making up words that attempt to sound more like Latin. And sufficiently sophoncified or sufficiently serencified and lots of different variations of that is a term that has to do with pushing back from the table and saying, I couldn't possibly eat more, but it's a fancy way of saying that.
Just to be clear, is sophoncified an actual word?
I don't know if you'd find sophoncified in the dictionary, but it's certainly one of these expressions that makes its way around American English in particular over the years and takes different forms because it's not written down usually. It's something that's passed on mouth to ear.
All right, give me one of your favorite words, another one, and tell us the story behind it.
Oh, man. Well, that's sort of like, what's my favorite star in the sky? Today, my favorite word, I think, is mellifluous. I've always had an affection for the word mellifluous because it's one of these great examples of what Ralph Waldo Emerson called fossil poetry, tucked inside a single word. Because the word mellifluous comes from Latin words that literally mean flowing with honey. If you know Spanish, you know that it's related to miel, meaning honey. And
Right.
The fluous in mellifluous has to do with flowing and fluid and words like that. So if somebody has a mellifluous voice in the picturesque original sense, it meant flowing with honey.
There's also words that people despise. A listener of your radio show called in because she hates a word so much she couldn't even say it. Let's listen.
Let me spell it.
Can we say this on the radio?
Oh yes. It's not not an obscene word at all.
Okay.
It makes my flesh crawl.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, ready? MOIST.
Moist?
Oh my Lord, Grant, please.
Oh, that is funny. I knew that was the word that was coming when I first heard that piece of tape. I just knew it because people hate that word. Why?
Linguists have actually looked into this. This has been a puzzle that linguists have tried to unravel. They were wondering, well, does it have to do with the diphthong? But the more they looked into it, they saw that it was associated with words that might make people a little bit uncomfortable. It has to do with the context in which that term is often found, and it just sort of skeeves some people.
I learned from your book that there's something like 7,000 living languages on Earth, and then, of course, there's the other ones that we've already talked about, like Latin and Ancient Greek, that have had a huge influence on our words, even though no one really speaks them anymore. How do we know, as much as we do, about these origin stories from words, of words, when the clues are so old and they can be so complex?
Yeah, that's a really fascinating question because it has to do with sort of in the same way that an archaeologist will see like the lip of a jar and they can discern how that jar must have looked. They piece together clues like detectives at a crime scene, and you see different correspondences between and among words that look similar, and historical linguists have been able to trace trace so many of these words that we use every day back to this prehistoric language, Proto-Indo-European. You can look at the sound correspondences. For example, the word for three in so many different languages. Think about Spanish tres and French trois and a lot of different languages that arise from Indo-European have a similar sound for that word for three. There's Grimm's law, which the folklorist Jakob Grimm came up with, which tells you that certain letters tend to correspond with each other. Like German Vater, V-A-T-E-R, is cognate with English father. And so you start to see these correspondences, and once you do, you can just make all these connections among languages.
I think we have a little bit more time. Why don't you pick another star in the sky and tell us what you think about it? One of your favorites.
Well, you mentioned the word boycott, which is a fascinating term because it actually comes from the name of someone, Charles Boycott, who was a retired British military officer who went to Ireland to enforce evicting poor tenant farmers out of their homes. And in 1880, the Irish rose up and began to find ways to resist this kind of rule. And they decided to put pressure on him by systematically shunning him and ostracizing him. And he might have faded into obscurity, except he wrote a long letter to a London newspaper complaining about his treatment, about how the boy who delivered messages would no longer do that, and his laundress had stopped doing his laundry. This letter got published, and as one Irish writer said, like a comet, the verb boycott appeared.
Fascinating. Martha Barnette, co-host of the radio show Away with Words. The new book is called Friends with Words, Adventures in Language Land. Martha, thank you very much. I'm really gosh-bustified by this conversation. Thanks so much.
Well, I guess we have to absquatulate now.
This message comes from Schwab. Everyone has moments when they could have done better, like cutting their own hair or forgetting sunscreen, so now you look like a tomato. Same goes for where you invest. Level up and invest smarter with Schwab. Get market insights, education, and human help when you need it. Learn more at schwab.com.
This message comes from First Leaf. Summer days hit better when First Leaf takes care of the wine for you. First Leaf's short quiz figures out what you like, then delivers a summer-ready box. Bright whites, smooth reds, and chillable bubbles. No wine aisle guessing, no errands. Just personalized picks shipped to your door. Get your summer sip lineup at tryfirstleaf.com/summertime with promo summertime. Your first 6 bottles are just $44.95 and are matched exactly to your taste. That's tryfirstleaf.com/summertime with promo summertime. This message comes from DSW. Where'd you get those shoes? Easy, they're from DSW. Because DSW has the exact right shoes for whatever you're into right now. Like the sneakers that make office hours feel like happy hour, the boots that turn grocery aisles into runways, and all the styles that show off the many sides of you. From daydreamer to multitasker and everything in between, because you do it all in really great shoes. Find a shoe for every you at your DSW store or DSW.com.